also telling you a little bit about this lovely vessel we're on today. But before we go any further, I do have to give you a very brief safety announcement. That's just to let you know where this vessel comes from. Did we recorded our exactly as they were in 1974. For the ladies in particular are really quite something to the gateway down here. I'm afraid they're not really allowed down there. But if you do get it down, you can burn it, boil it, and you might get some knives or anything that's cold. Here in the bar, knives in the room. I'm very aware of it myself, but then that day, I'm a doctor in the room. We're not good for today.
I'm also telling you a little bit about this lovely vessel we're on today. But before we go any further, I do have to give you a very brief safety announcement. That's just to let you know where this vessel comes from. Did we recorded our exactly as they were in 1974. For the ladies in particular are really quite something to the gateway down here. I'm afraid they're not really allowed down there. But if you do get it down, you can burn it, boil it, and you might get some knives or anything that's cold. Here in the bar, knives in the room. I'm very aware of it myself, but then that day, I'm a doctor in the room. We're not good for today. So if you have a good look around, you will spot some quite wonderful houses. Surface, and as the enemy ships try to enter the river, they very quickly have the hulls or the bottoms of their boats ripped off, leaving them free to plunder by the locals. It is just shy of £2,000 to stay there for 1 week during the summer, but don't worry, it's far more modern looking on the inside than it is on the outside. Now ideally you're sitting on the very bow deck. Just coming into view over on your right hand side, the furthest point of land there is Start Point, one of the most southerly points of the British Isles.
too, I believe it, but but they politely declined. They believed that the wood would be riddled with disease. So she was taken up to a place called Fleet Mill Cove, that's further up the river, near the town of Totnes, and she was left to rot away. But first her helm, and then it was like a little thatched hut. But that isn't a thatched hut, in fact it's made from reinforced concrete, and it dates back to the Second World War. It makes it look like an innocuous little hut, but in fact it holds two torpedo cannons. But as far as we know, put an air display on for you as well. So we'll go on at once here, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. Because the car ferry gets as higher up the river than the lower car ferries, and then lower down the river than the high, where you get the idea. Now we do refer to this as the new high car ferry. In fact, it has been in operation for over 5 years now, but it was built to replace the old one, and we were quite sad to see her go. At the time, she was the last passenger vessel here on the river. She rode for 50 years, made well over $1 million crossings. But we do need something quite as large, quite as fast. Side, we have Philip & Sons Shipbuilders and Engineers. This was established way back in 1858. I know that because it's written on the wall. During his time it was a very successful shipyard. During the Second World War they built nearly 300 warships here. They built 4 ferries across the Mersey, as immortalised in his song by Jerry and the Pacemakers, and it was at this yard where Shea Blythe had his yacht British Steel built. This is the one he used for breaking the world out of things. This is where the real money is in Dartmouth nowadays. We've recently found out with a local consortium that's paid £20 million for the land, and they got some very grand plans for it. They want to knock down all of these buildings, and then they want to build a 5-star hotel and a conference centre amongst other things. And part of the deal was we're going to build some affordable accommodation for us locals. And this is something we got very excited about. Affordable accommodation is very hard to come by in Dartmouth nowadays. The bloke who designed it, but certainly not most of us locals. But it has been a bit of a spanner thrown in the works. There's a pair of horseshoe bats nesting in one of the buildings over there. Now horseshoe bats are incredibly rare and incredibly protected, and unless they leave their own accord, well, I'm afraid no building can take place on the land whatsoever. And that's £20 million on the drain for the time being. 2024. And I will take this opportunity to answer a few of the most often asked questions we get here at the time of cold a day. Now we're often asked why we don't see too much smoke. Well, we use a Welsh coal and it's a very clean burn, and we use this really as a PT of a river uses. The owners of the very expensive gym palaces and huge yachts tend to get a bit upset when they start finding black smudges on them. And another reason you don't see too much smoke is we really don't need to have a roaring fire going, just cruising up and down the river like we do. Now, often
young deckhand on board that day, and he had the brilliant idea of throwing the anchor over the side to stop it. This would have been a brilliant idea if at first he checked to see if the anchor was actually attached to anything. It wasn't, and to this day somewhere below us lies that anchor and all of its chain. And the old ferry carried on its course, causing nearly £1 million worth of damage to all the boats down the left. As you can imagine, that deckhand wasn't very popular and was very quickly sacked. Dartmouth is a small community. The deckhand's reputation was in tatters, and he found it almost impossible to find employment again. But luckily